Hello, everyone, and welcome to Venita's podcast. I appreciate you guys joining us today, and I thank you so much for your time. As you know, February is Black History Month. So, all this month, we'll be sharing and featuring very important information about our history. And some people are under the misconception that Black history is only for Black people. That's not true. It's for everybody. We're just sharing our history with you. And so I just wanted to point that out. I have two very special guests, and I would love it if everybody would pay attention to this story because it is a great story and it teaches, well, it taught me to want to share more stories with my children and my grandchildren. So, and also share this. It's going to be on YouTube, it's going to be on Twitch, and please take a moment and share this information. And having said that, I have my two guests here. I'll start with Sylvia Woolfolk Martin. Hi, Sylvia.
Hey,
Welcome to the
hello.
show.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Sylvia is a registered nurse, well, a retired registered nurse. She just pointed out that she was retired 8 years and we're still working. So, anyway, she's also a great community leader. She's part of the Southern Connecticut Black Chamber of Commerce, the National Council of Negro Women, Juneteenth, and she wears a bunch of hats and just one of the sweetest persons
Oh,
I know.
thank you,
So, Sylvia, thank you so much for coming on the show.
thank you, thank you.
And we also have Mr. Jeffery Fletcher, who is the CEO, president of the Ruby Calvin African American Museum. That's what this is all about. To me, I'm so passionate. This story is extraordinary. And the legacy that his parents left for your family forever and sharing it with the public as well. It's extraordinary, and I get goosebumps saying that. So, anyway, Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming on the show and welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
You're welcome. So, please take a moment, tell us a little bit about yourself, and please take us through the story of your family's legacy, the African American Museum.
Okay. So again, I'm thankful for being here on this month for Black History Month, and I am Jeffrey Fletcher, and I am the executive director and the president of the African American Collections Incorporated and the Ruby and Calvin Fletcher African American History Museum. We're located at 952 East Broadway here in Stratford, Connecticut. So this journey started probably, I would say, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, while growing up in a small community of Colchester, Connecticut, which is situated out near southeastern Connecticut, the casinos, Norwich, New London area, and the catalyst behind this whole endeavor, this project of collecting, preserving, and educating folks came from my mom. But my dad was an integral part in this process as well. My mom, Ruby, being from a rural place in South Carolina, growing
Mm-hmm.
up in South Carolina, during the 1930s, and my dad growing up in a place called Fuquay Farina, North Carolina. They did not know each other at that time. But the story, as I get through it, you'll see how they connected. But my mom grew up in Camden, South Carolina, on a sharecropper's farm. She lived there with her 7 brothers and sisters and my grandparents. And if we all know what a sharecropper's farm was, it was not owned. The property was not owned by
Yep.
relatives. It was not handed down to anyone. But it was a property of white farmers
Okay.
who basically allowed people of color, African Americans, to live on that property. Um, uh, as they lived there, they had to work the land
Yes.
and they had to harvest and plant. So, my mom, being the two of the oldest of the 7, she was forced to go into the fields and work with my grandfather. But it wasn't on his command, it was on the white sharecropper's command because my grandfather was a very stern man and he had pride, principles, and he believed that all his children should be educated and go to school. But in order for him to stay there with his family, these two oldest children had to help in the field, which were my uncle and my mom. And so the money that my mom would get, what little bit of money she would get from reaping the benefits of harvesting and planting, she would take some of her money and she'd buy bric-a-brac, little statues, porcelain statues, and things of that nature. But it came with a huge dent because as she was working in the field, she was not afforded the opportunity to go to school, and so therefore she kept being pulled in and out of school and had to be forced to work in the fields during the fall and as well as in the spring when they had to plant.
Yeah.
And so she got tired after a while of doing that. At the age of 16 years old, she decided that she had enough. And unbeknownst to my grandparents, she had saved up enough money in the late 1930s, early 40s to say, I'm out of here. And she actually participated in what we now know today of the Great Black Migration, where we had African Americans from the Jim Crow South and Southwest seeking refuge in places up north in the Midwest and out west due to the fact of Jim Crow segregation laws and equal housing and employment. So at that point, she decided to get on this bus and took her several days to actually come north. And she did not really have a clue to where she was going, but she understood the further you get away from the South and you go north, you're not going to be encountered with Jim Crow laws and segregation. She ended up landing in a place called Colchester, Connecticut. And Colchester, again, as I mentioned previously, is situated in southeastern Connecticut. And the community that she ended up going to was inhabited by Jewish folks. They were farmers, they were Jewish Russian Jews. And when she got off that bus, she anticipated to see people that looked like her, because in her mind she felt and thought that there were other blacks that were in that community. And when she got off that bus, she had nowhere to really go. And she stayed in a rooming house for a few days or so until she came across a Jewish family that saw how young she was and took her in.
Wow.
And when they took her in, she wasn't a domestic. You know, it wasn't that she was a mammy or a nursemaid or anything of that nature, but they took her in and treated her as if she was one of their
them.
own.
What an amazing woman your mother was. Even though she didn't have the education or was going to school, to me, she was the smartest to get away. She knew what she wanted. Amazing. I just had to say that.
No, it's good. Yeah, and you know, you never knew how I never knew how impactful she was in that community or as our family.
And your
But
family.
she was educated, finally educated by this family, and she was educated to their spirituality, their traditions, their culture, and even their food, right? And so I tell folks today, jumping ahead, that in my household, my siblings, my three other siblings that I grew up with, and my dad, we had the best of both worlds, right? Because my mom still embraced her Southern roots, her Baptist roots, as well as embracing the religion of Judaism, and the thing that stands out really strong is that she really believed in this, and we celebrated those holidays.
Sure.
And so I was thankful to be able to have that, but it was a very, very stark reminder of where she came from. But they also told her to not ever to forget, as the Jewish mantra goes, never to forget, because what had happened on the other side of the hemisphere of this world, where Jews were persecuted and they were sent to their death in Nazi Germany. And also on top of that, they told her to never forget where she came from and to who she is. So I thought that was very impactful. And to this day, I'm still friends with a lot of these second, third generation families of Jewish folks who knew what their families had done for my mother.
Right. She probably took that as, never forget where you're from. And I think that's so important. And maybe that encouraged her or inspired her to begin the collection.
Well,
or part of it, I think, so that You think?
I think the jury's out on that, right?
Oh, okay.
Only because when folks ask me just what you just said, what inspired her,
Yeah.
I never knew. She never talked about it, and as time progressed and she was acclimated and she got herself situated in Colchester and she knew her way around, could navigate around, she started collecting again. But then my dad came north 10 years after her arriving in Colchester, and they married and had us, right? And then it picked up. So my mom was kind of like the driving force, as I mentioned, and as I do in presentations when I'm outside the museum as well as doing personal tours, my mom was the driving force. So if we really wanted to say the Ruby Fletcher Museum, I mean, I could say that, but my dad was the co-pilot, right? Because whenever she wanted to go somewhere to an auction, a tag sale, or anything that had to do with relics of artifacts, she would look at him and say to him, "Calvin, let's go." I mean, like a strong black woman, right?
That's what I do.
Strong black woman.
I'm like, Joe, come on.
And my dad didn't object, didn't oppose. I mean, he went. So I say he was the co-pilot. My mom was the pilot in this operation. But I don't think today, back then rather, I don't think I had a clear understanding of why she collected this stuff. But I started to connect the dots, and especially as she used some of these objects for educational pieces in our home, to my siblings and myself about what was going on in this community, because we were one of maybe 6 African American families in this community that was inhabited by Jewish people, Irish, and Italians, and most of these towns were old Yankee communities, and so she used a lot of these objects to educate us on perception, myths, stereotypes, microtransgressions, the silent dog whistles that may be used with these objects. So she was on to something, but at that time you're young, you really you don't process those things.
Right, yeah. I'm still going back. I'm gonna go back with my original. I thought that she collected those items, or part of the reason, and you have to think this too, to remind her what she left behind, and part of it, right? The Jim Crow South, all the abuse and things like that. And, to teach you guys, her children, and look at it today. We will never forget. And so the Jewish family that she was with said never forget. And I think that stuck with her. So anyway, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, but I think that's
part of it, right?
Yeah, I think yes. Yeah. I mean, I think there's some resemblance of that.
Absolutely.
But I as I talk about this and my mom's reasoning and trying to figure out her reasoning for why she collected, I think more so she wanted those objects for us to be able to see how we were perceived, how people of color were perceived as clowns, buffoons, idiots, and things of that nature. And she often reminded us of that. She said, are you going to go to school? And she used to be very, very straightforward, because she was a very transparent and very honest person and spiritual person. And she was not, at any stretch of imagination or mind, someone who believed in separatism, racism, discrimination. But she always spoke truth to power. And she would say, this is how mainstream majority of white America looks at us, as being able to tell a joke, laugh, smile all the time, grin, and take life kind of like lackadaisical. And she always pointed that out. You can go to school and be a clown or be the class clown all you want, but at the end of the day, these people think of you as some of these objects.
Exactly. That is so true. I've always looked at, and I don't like the South, number one, because of the way, people, perceive us and the way they treat us. But I've always looked at racism as just a deep-rooted psychological mental illness that has been taught from generation to generation, because we were created by, in the face of love. If you put two little kids together, white, black, whatever, they're going to love each other. They're going to play with each other. You know what I mean? So I just, that's how I look at racism. And now that I'm a senior, I really don't care how other people feel about me.
Mm-hmm.
And like my best friend of 41 years is we're complete opposites. I'm black, I'm from the projects, I'm a Democrat, didn't have the best education or travel, single parent home, very poor with 7 kids. She grew up in Monroe. White Republican, Monroe, traveled the world, had the best of everything. We have been friends for 41 years and counting. So I look at people, I love everybody that, I see, unless you give me a reason not to. So when it comes to how people perceive me, how they think of me, and what they think I am, it really, truly have no effect on me anymore. I used to bother me when I was young, but if they think I'm a clown or ugly or whatever you want to think, it really truly doesn't bother me because those type of feelings only hurt the people feeling it. And you know what? I learned a lot from what's his name? Watching Facebook, Shador Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
What a humble guy. You're an athlete, a former athlete. Have you seen him? He is one of the most graceful and grateful persons I've seen. And listening to him has taught me to be more thankful of everything. And so when it comes to other people's perception of you, that's, you just have to let it go.
Well, I mean, you can to an extent, right? To back up on all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about the South, and you talk about, there's nothing about the South that
I
is
like
positive or you like,
Yeah.
right?
Not really.
My mom coming from the South. One thing that she often would say, and I remember this so poignantly, so clear. I was probably in the 5th grade, and I came home from school early. My mom was a stay-at-home mom too,
Oh.
and in our community, as I said, the black community was so small, and the women that were in the black community were so small, and some of them did not work, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were stay-at-home. So there were three particular black women at that point that would come to they'd go to each other's house and watch soap operas and have coffee or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I remember one day coming home from school, and my mom and her friends, 2 friends were in the living room, African American friends, were watching a soap opera. So what I decided to do was to sit down to be curious because I had nothing else to do, but plus I wanted to be nosy and see what they were talking about.
All kids do.
So I sat down, and it just so happened, I think this might have been in 1968, 69. Now I'm aging myself, right? And I'm sitting there, and they were talking, my mom always talked about politics. They always talked about politics and current events of what was going on across the country. And as the civil rights movement was full in force and things were happening, George Wallace appeared as a presidential candidate. And I remember one of my mom's friends, best friend, she was like a godmother to me. She said to my mother, she said, "Well, Ruby, I can't stand that man. He is so horrible. He is a white racist devil and all this." And so my mom looked at her and let her finish her conversation. And she said this. She said, "Listen, I respect this man." And a lot of folks, they raise their eyebrows when I tell this story. She said, "I respect this man, not because of anything that he's espousing, but I respect him because he's telling me where he does not want you to be. He's telling you that he's going to stand up on the steps of every institution, educational institution, every city hall to keep you from voting, keeping you from going to school." One thing about the white Southerners is that she said they will, and she grew up in the South, she said they will tell you where you can't go and where you can go. Is that right?
100%.
Is that right? No, it's not right.
It's not at all.
Her thing was, as they say, Thurgood Marshall said, separate but equal, right? You can be separate but equal. If we have equality, and whites were on to the left and blacks were on the right, and if we had the same opportunities, same educational milieu, then that's okay, right? Don't believe in it, but that's all right. If that's what this man is saying, I'm not going to sit down and break bread with him, but I have to respect him because he's telling me to our faces what and where he does not want us to be. Now, she said when she came north, that was one of the most difficult things, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out here in the audience that can agree with me on this, is that when you come to the north, as she put it, there were people that held these very liberal but conservative, if there's such a thing, ideologies and viewpoints about black folks, but would never say them aloud.
Right.
Now, here's the shining moment. She pointed back to this and saying that when she lived with this Jewish family in Colchester, they would go to a G Fox. It was a department store, pretty well known in Connecticut and Hartford.
Okay.
They went to G Fox to go shopping in the store, and G Fox had a lunch counter. And after they got through shopping, they sat down. Even though she had known that blacks were not being served in the South during the 50s, right?
Right.
She thought it was okay to sit at the counter with this woman, and this Jewish woman said it was okay as well. But when it came time to take their order, the waitress said, "I'm sorry, I can serve you, but I can't serve her."
Oh, wow.
And my mother thought, well, there are no signs, right?
Right.
There are no signs anywhere.
They don't say it.
It's okay. So to all of that, there is a different mindset that she was going by. And there are some blacks now that are in her generation, if she were alive or if they were alive, and I've heard them say this. The difference between the South and the North is that the white folks in the South will tell you where they don't want you to go, and the white folks in the North will not let you know.
Exactly.
You see?
They're very discreet, but they feel the same.
Correct.
A lot of them. So yeah, I call them posers.
Right.
You know.
But to your it's a bitter pill to swallow, and to say that I don't feed in the stereotypes or any of that, but I try to, when young folks come to the museum, especially that look like us, black and brown, right? I try to express to them, especially when we get to a space in the museum called our stereotype, microtransgression, and discrimination space. I start to break down those objects that my mom had taught myself and my brother and sisters about and what they represent and how they are interpreted and how perception plays a large part in all of these stereotypes and mythological ideations about black folks.
That is, you know what? That's very necessary. And what about you, Sylvia? In terms of when you were a nurse, and did you experience anything like that in the hospitals? Because my husband's from North Carolina, so I'll tell you the short story. And this is one of the reasons I don't like him. I've been up here my whole life, and I don't want to live in the South. We go down there, I think it was in 1981. Joe and I have been together like forever. I think it was like 1981. We go to North Carolina. Joe's from a little teeny town that's called Liberty. And they didn't even have paved roads, I think, at that time. They were like dirt roads or whatever. And he used to play football when he was in high school. And he had, Caucasian friends, and he knew what he could do and what he couldn't do, exactly like you just described. So we go down there, and he sees some of these guys that he played football with, and the guy says to him, "You still living up there with them Yankees, boy?" And Joe was just like that was normal. "Yeah, man, blah, 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 blah." I'm like, he just called you a boy. You're a grown man, but they, so they kind of like, groom you and teach you to accept being treated as less, although they're open and honest. I appreciate that, but it's kind of like in a demeaning manner. You know what I mean? Like they teach you to, look up to them. If you understand, do you understand what I'm saying?
So when you say them, see.
So I'm saying in the South, white Southern
white
people,
Southerners.
by them being so open and honest and upfront, which I get it, I understand it, but it's allowed. I'm not going to allow anyone to talk to me like that. And that's why I don't want to be around it, even though I appreciate the honesty. Okay, I know you don't like me. I don't like you. I stay in my corner. You stay in yours. But you're not going to speak it out loud to me without any consequences anyway. Verbal consequences. That's the part I don't like. So when you talk about white people in the North not speaking it, they're discreet and to some degree respectful by not saying it out loud, by not saying, okay, you can't cross this line or you can't sit here or whatever. So you see, that's where I am because I guess I was brought up in the North. So that's where I am with that speaking the truth. Okay, it's your truth. What you say at your dinner table, the terminology you use at your dinner table, you cannot go into a multicultural working area and say that not me, not you, not anybody. You know what I mean? Because somebody's gonna get hurt. You know.
And sometimes there's always, as I call it, casualties of war, right? Casualties of war.
Whoa.
And it's a truism, right?
Yeah.
Because this museum, if we can go to that a little bit, so the museum has served as a litmus test for me in life, right? And looking at who I am, but looking at the people that look like me, right? And it has served as a litmus test to look at the involvement, the motivation, the determination. How determined, how motivated are people that look like us are going to support what this is and what I am trying to do. This is bigger than Jeffery Fletcher.
Yes.
Bigger than Ruby and Calvin Fletcher, right?
Yes.
So the museum has showed me an awful lot on both sides, black and white. And when it comes to education, when it comes to financial, when it comes to public relations, all of that, and the involvement. And so I've learned an awful lot by having this museum. And have there been times when I threw my hands up and said, I don't want to do this? There has been. Has there been sleepless nights?
Why? Because it was too hurtful, or
no, not because it was hurtful. It gave me a different look at my people.
Yeah.
Right. My mom and my daddy, they were transparent, and to that, my mom was always called someone of being a troublemaker, but good trouble, as the late John Lewis has called it. Right.
I'm one of them.
But she championed black, she championed white, she championed Latino, she championed Muslim, she championed drug addicts, drug dealers, prostitutes, people who were disadvantaged. Those were her people. And I realized who those people were on the day we were celebrating her funeral. Hundreds and hundreds of people.
Wow.
All rainbows of color coming through the line to pay their respect, and me sitting next to my daddy and saying, Daddy, who are these people? Because now I've been away and didn't get back home as much as I could. And he turned to me and he said, these are the people your mama took care of.
She's amazing.
To the extent of even the surgical team, because my mom passed away in Hartford Hospital of a massive heart attack, and even the surgical team as well as the nursing staff showed up, which I never seen that before. But my mom had spent about a week before her passing on that cardiac unit, and whatever she had expressed or educated or did spiritual talks with, it resonated, and it made them compelled to come to her services. So I knew at that point how much my mom had an impact on all races and culture and people.
Wow. I'm getting goosebumps. Oh my goodness.
But she was someone who spoke her mind.
Yeah.
And so I get that spirit when I'm in that museum, when we have groups and we have people that look like me, black folks that come in there, Latino people that come in there, especially in the crisis and the times that we are now. And I'm talking to our young Latino brothers and sisters about history repeating itself, and then going back and trying to educate them on bounty hunters and the local sheriff's departments deputizing these vigilante groups like the Klan to chase down black folks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here we are today, right? And I don't mean to jump ahead of the segments
No,
of
no.
anything, but
You go.
here we are today.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Called ICE.
It's called ICE. And
Called ICE.
and there are these young kids, these young folks, especially Latino children, are in denial that this is really happening, and that it doesn't happen until it shows up on our doorstep, and it's
Exactly.
here. So that's the bitter part I have to deal with, is educating the cultures of young folks that come there, and it's kind of like, I have no teaching degree. My degrees are in psychology, right? My profession was law enforcement, and I did some work in mental health, but I never saw myself as being a teacher or a history professor or an anthropologist. But I find myself doing that, and it's a very, very difficult pull, but we're doing it by using the collection that my mom had bought to me, as well as what I have enhanced. So, I mean, this is a broad range of.
It is.
We can be here all day talking,
Yes,
right?
I know. This is so. That's why I wanted you to come on. So, we're all teachers. We just don't, don't put a
Utilize it
title
enough,
on
right?
it. Yes, like parents are teachers. Everyone's a teacher. What you're doing, what I can't even really get it out. What your mom has done here, it's international. It's so huge. Like you said, it's
Impactful.
so much bigger than you and her. And I respect you teaching the truth about being black and how some white people may treat you and Spanish people may treat you. And that's, and speaking the truth, that's a whole different thing than having a white person in the South saying, I don't like you or you can't do this. That's not teaching. That's mean. So those things are separate. So what you're doing is necessary, especially now. You have to do it. And you're telling the truth about, to these students. They need to know that because they don't understand, if say there's just one white person in a room full of black kids and they all treat them different, or, one black person in a room full of white kids and they all treat them different. So they need to know these things that you're teaching, how other races and cultures will act and what they think of you and this and that and the other. But on the other hand, for, let's take a white girl to say, I've actually had this happen to me in Westport, Connecticut in 1980, between 83 and 86. And I'm going to go off for a minute. A white girl told me that she was better than me to my face at Stauffer Chemical Company. That's where I worked. And so the supervisor said she don't believe in that and this, that, and the other. Long story short, the same girl, name was Kathy Farrington, and she could confirm my story. She broke her leg, and all of her white friends, she was in a hospital. Remember, they used to keep in the hospital for like a week if you broke your leg back in the 80s. So she broke her leg, okay? And I was the only one that came to visit her. And so I taught her how to like me. And so what you're doing is very necessary. You're teaching them how to treat other people that are different than them. And that's okay. But the hate part of it, I can't take. I don't believe you have the right to offend somebody just because you're in the South, or just because, like I said, racism is taught. Nobody's born with that. Well, maybe a couple people, but for the most part of it, it is taught that you are this and that you are that. So I love what you're doing, and yeah, we could be here all day.
Yeah.
Do we have any clips we could put up? Like I know that we went through the my technician John. Hi, John. If you could put up a couple pictures when you get a chance, and maybe we could show exactly what you do. I thought it was so important for everyone to have a visual of you in your museum with a few of your pieces and some of the children. And, just, again, I would like everyone to share this information, share this story, because it's just so important. And like Mr. Fletcher said, it's so much bigger than him. It's so much bigger than his mom, his whole family. And I think, your mom was smart beyond, the books.
Hmm.
I mean, she had a vision. She loved people. Everyone that she came in contact with, she made a connection. And it was like spiritual,
Yeah,
like when she was in a hospital.
speaking of the connection, and again, what makes this museum different than other museums, you're not going to come to it like you would do the Peabody Museum or the British Art Museum, right? The museum, we interface the stories of what we're doing now by speaking of my family into those segments of history. We put a face on national history based off of what my life experience has been, my mom's life experience, my dad's grandfather, grandparents, great grandparents, and we put their faces, their time of on this earth into those national figures. So if you go to the slavery unit or the slavery section in the museum, there's the conversation that I can have about my great great grandmother, who was the matriarch of our family, that was born in 1872, the daughter of two slaves, and she died at the age of 117 in 1983.
Wow.
Right? Then, if you go into the another section where my mom, some of her objects are, we now tell the stories. We talked about why she collected and what those objects really represented in terms of perception. Right?
Yeah.
And then we move into the living room section, which every culture and race in the United States during the 50s and 60s could identify with a living room that they had in their families that was sectioned off from children.
Yeah.
You could not go in that
clean
space.
room.
The
Yeah,
clean
right.
room. And there was plastic on the furniture.
Yes.
So everybody, Irish, Italian, that have come through there have identified that room. But the thing that stands out so poignantly is the magazines, the jet and ebony magazines from the 50s that are on that table that gave black folks the information of what was going on in the South during the 50s and 60s that they weren't getting on the radio and television.
Exactly.
And then we move on to Dr. King's section, the Tuskegee Airmen, which is a relative of mine in there. So there's a face
There's a
on
story.
that and a story. And then you get to the civil rights section where we have our doors of segregation. Colored women, colored men, white men, white women. Then there's one particular door that brings it really, really, reality slaps you in the face. There's a door, a replica door from the Starbucks coffee chain that in 2013, the year before I was to retire, I was told in the city of New Haven at this Starbucks on Church and Chapel that I could not use the bathroom. Right? So that was a reality slap right there. And
Wow.
the reason why was because the white barrister that had the keys to the bathroom decided she did not want to give me the key. Now, here's the kicker. I was in uniform as a police officer at the time, but she did not know that I was working extra duty in uniform because my role was working in the robbery division and I was working extra duty in uniform. But my partner, who was white, was in plain clothes, and we had decided we were going to get together and meet at Starbucks. Now, I don't even drink coffee, never tasted coffee, don't like coffee, right? And so I know that area very well. And so when I went to go ask for the key to the bathroom, the barrister said nothing to me. 2 times, 3 times, nothing. Finally, she said the key is in the safe in the back, and I can't get it, and it won't come out until 12 o'clock. Now, I knew that was a lie. Rather than use the color of my uniform and my badge and kind of like intimidate her, I left and went next door. Now, my partner, who was there, talking to someone else, didn't know I left. And when I returned, he asked where I went. So I told him where I went. I said, I went next door to use the bathroom. He said, you know, we can use the bathroom here every day, all day. And I said, I do know that. So I asked her again why I didn't get the key. She didn't tell me. So my partner told me that he had witnessed her give the key to a white gentleman in a black suit and a red tie, and he gave it back. And so at that point, I felt everything my great grandparents, my grandparents, and my parents had told me here in 2013 that I never
2013.
thought would happen. And so at that point, long story short, we went through a process, but I decided to pull the case off the court dockets only because my partner was going through a divorce involving children. And as it was said to me, if he did a deposition for that case and he became untruthful about something, then whatever that deposition exposed could be used in my case with Starbucks to water his credibility down. So rather than to do that, to have it thrown out, I took the case off the docket, leaving in mind that I'm going to revisit this at some point. God will help me figure this out in the long run. Sure enough, before anyone knew that I took that case off the court dockets, Starbucks sends me a letter which I have memorialized on the door of this museum, of that replica of the same door. In a nutshell, Starbucks is offering me $3,000, but I would
For
have
insulting you.
Well, I would have to sign a non-disclosure agreement never to talk about it. So, of course, I didn't take the money. So I'm talking about it as we're here today. So I wanted everyone to understand that Jim Crow is still alive and well.
Right.
And
and emboldened even now.
and my good friend Edsel Blair, the only remaining Greensboro 4 individual that's alive and lives in Massachusetts, he and I talked, and he had said to me, Fletcher, you've dealt with, I dealt with Jim Crow, you're dealing with James Crow Esquire, the grandson.
Wow.
And so that stuck out in my mind to hear this pioneer trailblazer that sat at the lunch counters in F.W. Woolworth in Greensboro, and for him to tell me who I was fighting, and he and I had the same parallel course. So I just thought I'd bring that up about how the museum serves our stories with the national issues that we have dealt with in this culture.
And still dealing with. I have to tell you something about your opening day for that museum. I had never gone to an African American museum ever at that point. I'll never forget that day as long as I live. Yours was the first one I went to.
Really?
It was pouring down raining. Remember? People were all outside in their cars, and I was saturated. I stood outside in the rain because there was no room on the tent. There was just way too many people. So going through that museum for the first time, Joe was so embarrassed. I cried almost all the way through.
Wow.
I had never seen, anything like that. And I was just like so hurt by it. I didn't take it like as a lesson or anything. And thank God it was raining because nobody knew I was crying. I was just dripping wet. And so it kind of saved me. And Joe was like trying to, comfort me and everything. He's from the South, so he saw all of that stuff or whatever. But it was, for me, it was opening my eyes to like the truth that I don't know if I buried it or what.
Talk about it.
It was just so hurtful to see those things. I don't watch movies like Roots and deep racism movies and all that stuff because it's just too painful for me.
It's post-traumatic.
But your yeah, thank you. Your museum was the first, and I think everybody, if you have an opportunity to go to this museum, it's where's the address again?
952 East Broadway. But I want to, in Stratford, Connecticut, but I'd be remiss if I did not say this, and I truly have to say it. I wouldn't be here, this museum wouldn't be here, had it not been for the present administration, right, of this community. And whether you liked her or you didn't like her or whether you had politics, there was no politics in this.
Yes.
There were absolutely no politics in this. And even as we are still we're struggling with trying to get additional funding to move to the next location, right? This project was a bipartisan project. It was a bipartisan project from the municipality on up to the state capitol, where funds were approved for what we are in the process of doing. So I mean, I hope this isn't something that's an FCC violation by me saying the past administration that was here under Mayor Hoydick was available for us. And I got to say, transparency and honesty. Um, I was told by communities that look like me, don't call us, we'll
Oh
call
yeah.
you.
Oh yeah.
And that was the biggest gut punch. And I'm you can call me a sellout, you can call me a bootlicker, you can call me an Uncle Tom, what you want. But you know what? I speak truth to power, and my mom always believed you give people their flowers while they're alive, and you tell them how much you appreciate them and what they've done for you. And that's what one of the things that we do in that museum. And I'm not going to go down the road and tell you everybody we've enshrined so far, but to where we are today, I would not be here for just those people that had helped me to be where I am. Because has been a dream for like 15 years.
And I'm glad you said that. It's important to always acknowledge help, regardless. But the most important thing you said was bipartisan. Everybody came together to do it. And then on another note, nothing hurts me more than being kicked down by another black woman in a higher position. That is just gut wrenching. So I understand how you feel. It's happened to me so many times where you figure, okay, you made it, you got there, help me get there. No, they don't want to see you do that. So yeah, there's that black on black racism.
We got to call it out,
I've
Venita.
yeah.
You got to call it out when it
Oh
happens.
Lord, yes.
And if you don't call it out, it's going to be a repetitive cycle over and over and over, because folks will think that's how it's supposed to be. That segment of what they call the bourgeoisie, that is supposedly the movers and the shakers. And they're not the movers and the shakers. They're not the decision makers. I've learned that in this museum. I know who the decision makers are. You and everybody else in this room knows who makes these decisions, right? And I'm not saying that to be facetious. I'm not saying that to attack anybody's importance of who they are or what they do. But I've learned from my mama, my daddy, if I'm going to deal and do something that's going to be productive and valued, I have to go to the top.
Yep.
Right? That's what you got to do.
That's what you got to do.
And now I feel like I got the weights off my shoulders now, because I had Ruby Fletcher just pass through me to say this.
Well, yeah, you got a lot of her in you. You have to say it. You got to call it out. If you don't call it out, they'll just continue to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'll tell you the short story. All my stories are short.
My
own sister-in-law. I'm going to tell you what I did. My husband's, they have 10 siblings. I was great friends with 2 of the sisters. One passed away. One is in Indiana on oxygen and can't really leave. And I don't feel like going to the Midwest right now. And then, so there's another one that was in North Carolina. And I said this right to her face. So I said, let me, see if we could establish some type of rapport. I called her. She's in North Carolina. Invited her to my house. Paid her plane fare, round trip. I arranged spas, manicures, pedicures, and, took her shopping, and she's blind. So I served her. Like when I did breakfast, your eggs are at 12 o'clock, your bacon's at 3, did her laundry, everything. She treated me like SH explanation T. She spoke down to me. She degraded me in every way. I said, this is a house guest from hell. She thought she had the right to degrade me. And because I had always tried to get their approval. I don't think any of them thought I was good enough for Joe. Well, here we are 41 years later. I guess so. But anyway, and so I always did things like, try to just like suck up to them, make a long story short. And I'm not that person anymore, because guess what? I don't care what other people think about me anymore. This woman, same black skin, just like me, degraded me in my own home. Until we were going to the spa to have her, sweetest massage. And I just told her, I said, you make me feel like I don't want to be in my own home. She goes, well, you do the same to me. And I said, well, maybe we shouldn't be together. But it wasn't. It was one way. Why would I call somebody, invite them up there? So talk about black on black. it's even worse in the black on black family members. Way worse. And it wasn't like the light skinned black, because, we got light skinned racism and we got the dark skin racism. She's the same brown skin I have. And this is how she treated me. So we got to call it out. And my story is airborne now. It's going to be it's going out internationally.
Yeah, colorization. So
Yeah,
colorization plays a big part in our museum, especially when we get to that segment or that section where my mom used those objects as a educational tool. And we talk about, because if my mom was of the mindset, if we're going to hold people accountable and have them rise to another level, then we have to do the same thing for us, right?
Exactly.
And we have to come out of that colorization of our texture of our hair, our nose features, our skin color, and we go back to where all this started in the African American culture, which is the after Reconstruction going into the early 1900s, when HBCUs practiced this colorization process with the brown paper bag.
I remember.
And so forth. And I bring that story up because my mom was the type of person, if we're gonna talk about one group of people, we
Gotta
gotta
talk about the other.
And then the end of the story goes, in order for us to embrace and accept other people, or if we're going to denounce them, we have to love ourselves first and get away from, Fletcher, you got curly hair because of this. Fletcher, you got pointed nose. Or Fletcher, you got, this, that, and the other thing.
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
So
100%.
we do that. And I put that to the test when I have young African American mothers who are bringing their children, and some grandparents, and I bring up, why do we still use colorization, and when a baby is born, and look at the tips of their ears to see their melanin's gonna be, and then to look at their fingertips to see how dark and how their skin complexion is gonna be, or that baby got good hair, right? Or that baby that baby's light skin and is almost looking white. So this is what we do, right? As other people. Because this is what we have been systematically conditioned to and taught through the generations. Or why do black folks don't want to eat? A lot of them, when we see the watermelon, we don't want to eat watermelon, right? A lot of blacks will come through the museum and they'll see the grotesque pictures with this hideous black figure that looks dehumanized, eating a piece of watermelon and smiling with his teeth, right? And then I'll say, how many black folk in here like watermelon? They'll hesitate, they'll look, and hardly nobody raise their hand. And I'll ask them, why? And there was a teacher that came from New York with his class, and he said he didn't eat watermelon. And he told me
Black
why.
guy?
Yes, he told me why.
Because of that?
Well, because of his grandmama, just like my great-grandmama, when we were little, we sit on the stoop after church eating dinner. After eating dinner, have a piece of watermelon sitting on the stoop and spitting seeds out, and all of us sitting out on the stoop. And my grandmother said, like his grandmother said, white folks would come around and take pictures of black children sitting on the steps eating watermelon and identifying them as pickaninnies, right? And so we were told never to eat watermelon on the front steps, go in the backyard to eat it. And so it was self-conscious. It was one of those stereotypes that was enforced by people that looked like us that carried on. And so, again, that's what we do to perpetuate those stereotypes as black folks, and we got to get out of that, right?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
And I say I eat watermelon. Matter of fact, I got a big watermelon sitting on my counter waiting for me to cut it. And I tell folks I'll eat it every day, 24/7. I don't care how much it costs. But on a serious note, that's what my mom was about, debunking stereotypes and myths and microtransgressions, even though she didn't know anything much about that, but that's what she was doing.
Wow. That's so true. That is so true. We have got to stop doing that. And like I said, when I became a certain age, I just really honestly, I don't think you hit the nail on the head. I think people don't love themselves until they get to a certain age. Until they get to, like, I stopped caring if my sister-in-laws thought I was good enough for my husband or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I just stopped. I just don't give a darn anymore. You know what I mean? I really, really don't. So what you're doing is teaching young people to love themselves, no matter how they look. Whether they're bald or long hair, white, black, round nose, whatever, and not to worry about what other people think of them.
Yeah, I mean,
It's so important.
was really so disheartening this morning getting up. I was getting out of the gym around 7 o'clock this morning, and I happened to look at my phone, and I seen on the phone images of our former president and his wife.
I saw
Obama.
that. With Donald.
That was, yeah.
I saw that.
That was like, it just gave me more fire and vigor to do the work that I'm doing. And I'm hopeful because right now this present administration is wiping out parts of and some of the National African American History Museum's presentation. They've actually systematically gone through every state to eradicate anything that has to do with slavery, right? And I say to folks, and maybe I'm taking a broad leap by this, and I think I'm in the crosshairs now. I can't be. He can't bother me because I do not take federal funds.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, you are lucky.
Mean, and so I say this for our listeners to understand. It's a mountain I got to climb now because if I take that federal funding, guess what happens? He will control my freedom of speech, control and culturize or non-culturize this history. So when I saw that this morning, that just gave me more fervor, more fire to say, you know what, this is why I have to do this because this kind of rhetoric is not healthy.
It's not healthy. And you know what? I try to be optimistic with almost all of this stuff.
Always, right.
How can you segregate when you're mixed? And I heard somebody on Facebook say this. How can you deport immigrants from stolen land? Did you see that on Facebook? It just made so much sense. So what are you going to do to, like my husband, his grandfather's Irish, his mom's Indian. What are you going to do? How can you categorize him? What are you going to do? Just assume that he's black? You just, what they're trying to do, I don't think is possible, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and I say that like I'm not sure, but I just don't think it's possible because I think they're trying to segregate.
Well, this that whole. I mean, that's going into that whole 2025 project, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that whole manifest is, and I look at what is what is happening now. The same thing as what they were doing in the early 1930s in Germany, right? This is a playbook.
Oh.
And this is that playbook.
He's running it play by play.
He's doing the playbook, and he's testing, using ICE to test these cities, how they can militarize, weaponize, and also silence voices by going after the journalists. So I was at Connecticut College on Monday to open a series of conversations, but more so we installed an exhibit up there for the National Black Journalists Association and at the college. And I put that exhibit up, and then we talked about that. But that weekend, last weekend, that's when Don Lemon and another freelance journalist that was African American got arrested. And I brought that up. I had a whole conversation that was totally scripted for what I was there for, but I had to digress and go off and go into that conversation. It was very appropriate.
It's current.
But the thing
Relevant.
is, this is what is going on across this country. You silence the media, right? You silence free speech. Then you go into these communities and you start doing these very tactical things that aren't law enforcement related. And you have the jackboot kind of like thugs that they were now once called insurrectionists. They have now been hired and deputized as officers to go in and chase people, brown people, across the country, and
so
incarcerate
sad.
or ship them away. So I think this is a test.
It is. And we have got to pass this test. We've got to win this test. And I think we will.
We are.
I'm
The
optimistic.
only thing that can conquer hate is love and unity. And this is a time where, especially this being Black History Month, we need to share our stories, share our history. Let everybody know how relevant we are to this country and why. And it's the stories that we tell that are going to live forever. Look at your mom's story. No matter what happens, that is going to live forever. You don't need federal funding. Your museum is going to live forever. And because it's God's will. God's got the final say.
Excellent. Definitely.
I just want, I could go on forever and ever, but we're going to hop over and do another show. I want to thank you so much. I'm sorry, you need to say something?
I just wanted to say something in the beginning. You were saying the affiliations, but I'm also on the board of directors for the Ruby and Calvin Fletcher African History Museum. And I've known Jeff for years and enjoy volunteering there, doing whatever I can. The other thing you asked about, what was my experience in terms of nursing? When I was in high school, my guidance counselor, Miss Flanagan, told me I would never be a nurse. She said I wasn't smart enough to be a nurse.
We hear that all the time.
I made sure I went back there after I got my nursing degree to show her, and she said she never said that. I said, you should never deter any child, mainly a Black person, Black child, whatever they want to do, that they can make it possible.
Yep. She was your fuel. Part of it, she inspired you, and it's not so much like I told you so. It's more so much like God is good, and I got that from Deion Sanders. I love the Sanders family, and he's right. And that's why we need to teach each other. And that's why, when someone tries to prevent you from doing something and you actually go through with it, you don't have to taunt them. You don't have to wave it in their face, because God is good and you accomplish that. And you're a great nurse, but you're retired. Yeah, but you're still a nurse. You'll always be a nurse.
No, I still
Thank
work.
you for sharing that.
Oh,
I knew you were doing so many other things. I just didn't want to take up the whole show. Give it all your... No, I'm just kidding. But, I call you Miss Stratford, right? She's involved in so much. I really... Sylvia, we love you.
I love my community. I love my
You
people.
love people. And so do you, Jeffrey. You have... Your mom, Ruby, is, you're living her. You have so much of her. Yeah. And you're doing exactly what she wanted you to do.
If you'd asked me 25, 30 years ago, I would have told you everybody's crazy that even thought that I would be doing this. I mean, again, it was a divine intervention for me, and there was no other way for me to think about how to extend this legacy. So I'm blessed.
Yes, you are. You are so blessed, and our audience is blessed. Thank you guys both so much for coming on the show. This was incredible, extraordinary, and a great way to kick off the Black History Month. I am so honored to be in your presence.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So that's our show for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining Venita's podcast. Don't forget to share this. Very important information. And happy Black History Month.